Dude,
How are you?
how's it going, man?
It's going. Get a hat for my terrible hair. There we go.
Hold on, I'm trying to get my headphones for some reason aren't connected. All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, apparently I can't hear you. So hold on. Uh, try this again. All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. All right. So apparently my AirPods, the microphone works, but not the headset. So off to the AirPods, but I hear you on the computer, which is
there's always something. There's always something.
something. How have you been?
Good, man. Good. I can't complain. I mean, it's been interesting, it's been a really wild and crazy couple of months. I think it's
Yeah.
going to continue being a pretty wild and crazy summer probably all the way through, but yeah, man, it's been cool. It's been cool.
How are things in Texas?
Um Austin is it feels different, but at the same time, it doesn't feel super different. Like my wife and I will go grocery shopping like maybe once a week. And my wife is still working, so she's a nurse. She was in the ER up until like before all this started. She actually left her job in the ER before all of this stuff went down because she was looking for just a change. There was like too big of a commute, and the work just wasn't the right fit, I think, at the hospital. So she found a new job that is 4 minutes away from our house. It's like within a mile of the house. It's really nice. Yeah, so we get to do some really cool things because of a much better um like work life balance that she has. But the city itself is, the city is kind of closed down. You know what I mean? Like the
Mhm.
restaurants are closed down and the coffee shops and stuff are closed down. But realistically speaking, I still see a ton of cars driving all over the place. Like I don't know how different it is out here other than having some restaurants closed down and coffee shops closed down.
Because up here in Minnesota, like my wife and I live in a suburb of the city. So she is a nanny, so she still gets to go to work. And then I'm just running the gym from my apartment.
Hmm.
So she still goes to work, but like her work trip used to take anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes, depending on traffic. And now it takes 15.
Oh wow. So
Yep.
that's a big difference. So a lot of people are not commuting to work, huh?
Yeah, most people up here are either just working from home or not working, I guess.
Yeah.
And then a lot of grocery stores up here are limiting it to one person per family to come grocery shopping. Like my wife and I couldn't go to Hy-Vee together if we wanted to.
Hmm.
But Walmart you could still go to together because it's Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an experience like that. We went to a couple different shops, went to like a Trader Joe's, and then we went to like a Central Market, which is like kind of like a more upscale like, grocery store out here. And
Okay.
they had these long crazy lines, like people waiting legit for hours to get in. I was like, you know what? I guarantee you there's a grocery store that does not have this sort of line. And then we went to Randall's, and it was just like letting us in, like just dozens of people like flooding in at a time. I was like, all right, well, if they don't
That's
care,
awesome. I
what
think
am I
I
supposed to
picked
do?
up a side job just to get out of the house to be like a grocery delivery boy. And so like I go in, do people shopping for them, and like I'll be in the middle of the grocery store looking for something on their list, and be like, well, that's not here. Gotta send them a message again. Hey, guys, they don't have this. Would you like this instead? No, I'll try next week. Oh, all right.
Yeah, that's like what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to? All right, well, they don't have it, so I guess what do you do?
Yeah, one lady's like, do they have toilet paper? No, no, they don't. Are you sure? Yeah. Can you check in back? Sure.
Yeah, I made a run to Costco last weekend or earlier this week to go and get toilet paper and paper towels. Like we had, a couple weeks left, maybe a week worth of it left. Uh, I was like, man, this is gonna be crazy. I'm probably gonna be waiting in line forever. and the entire trip took like less than 10 minutes. I like got right in there. They're very smart. They put the first thing you see when you come in is like the TVs and then paper towels and toilet paper. And I was like, all right, good to go. That was easy.
Perfect. Pick up an extra TV just in case.
Yeah, just pick up an extra TV. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, my parents still live in my hometown, which is like 4,500 people in Wisconsin. So like before Wisconsin got locked down, because they're locked down
Mm-hmm.
till the end of May, and Minnesota's only till the middle of May. We drove down there for a visit, like 3 hours, and went in Walmart, and nothing's out of stock. Like toilet paper was on the shelf, paper towel, and I was like, this is fantastic. And then
Yeah,
my
supply chain, man.
my dad's over 60, so they let like 60 and above go in early to get toilet paper one day, and they're like limit one, and he got two, and then he's like, I can put it back, and they're like, just take it, and he was like, all right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we I don't know how long we're supposed to be closed down for. I think it's like the first week of May,
okay,
but it's such a moving target. You know, I feel like every day it either it like moves, like it comes a little closer, it gets a little further, it comes a little closer, it gets a little, it's like I don't know. It's kind of this weird, stressful, strange, anxiety causing
yeah.
environment right now. So
But you still get to do all your work and stuff, right?
I do. Yeah. So
Which
I'm
is
I'm
good.
pretty lucky. Like you're looking at it, right? This is the office, this is the studio. This is where I work from. Um, and I like working out of the office. Not being on the road is nice for me for a bunch of different reasons. I get a much more you know, healthy exercise habit. Like I can
Yeah,
actually work out every day, and I get to spend more time with my wife and the dogs, and it's a comfortable place for me to be, as opposed to like living out of a hotel and my luggage for a couple weeks on end in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. Like that's kind of a pain. So it definitely, there are definitely some benefits. The toughest part for me is that with the season sort of being up in the air and kind of unknown, like the content that I usually put out has been derailed. And so there's a challenge there of like trying to find new types of content and new things to put out. So
okay. And how are you like handling that? I guess like,
how am I what?
handling like that challenge, having to.
Um, I'd say I'd probably give myself like, I'd give myself like a B plus on creativity, because I feel like I've come up with some new things that are pretty cool and different ideas. Um, I'd give myself like a B-ish on execution. I think I've done a pretty good job of actually putting out content and putting out new types of content that people haven't seen before. But the reaction from the audience that I've built has been very lukewarm. Like realistically speaking, I think people mainly want to hear me talk about the CrossFit Games and the game season. And when that news isn't around, or when there isn't a lot to talk about there, like I don't know how many people are really interested in watching and listening. So that's been, that's good information. That's good information to have. But that's been a challenge because, there isn't a lot going on in the space in terms of
Yeah, like
the game
everything's
stuff right now.
canceling. We could have like
Yeah.
the Zoom Olympics or the Zoom CrossFit Games.
The Zoom CrossFit Games would be awful. That would be like the worst possible solution to pulling this thing off. But I mean, at this point, who knows? Who knows what
Just
it's
have
going to
like
look like?
just have a one level 4 staff member go to every single person's house and judge them live.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of spending the budget of the CrossFit Games to put on an event without putting on an event. That's definitely a solution.
Just travel everywhere, or like every competitor that lives within like 50 miles of each other, so that we can have like groups of 5 or like groups of 10.
Yeah, that's like, what it is the online version of like, getting everyone to do the same workout at the same time with like standards and stuff. It has so many like basically insurmountable problems to it and issues to it, you might as well require stuff like that too. Like you might as well say like, all right, everyone who's in the old central region has to get together in one place and fake regionals together, but only, like no more than 10 people at a time. It's like you might as well make up rules like that because the rest of it is like so unlikely to get pulled off if you actually do it online. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the one like person in the government from that state that does CrossFit. And they're like, nah, it's fine.
Yeah. That's the only real solution, right? Is like find the CrossFitters within local government who can sign you off for breaking the rules and get like special dispensations, basically.
If I just thought if Arnold Schwarzenegger was still the governor of California, the CrossFit Games would be going on. Yeah.
I mean, man, at this point, they might still actually pull off the CrossFit Games in California. I mean, they're talking about doing it in Aromas, and they're serious about it, man. I mean, that's tough. That's real tough, but they're working very hard to actually make that happen.
Which would be insane. Like I messaged the morning talk up like a month ago. I was like, guys, they need to take the top 20 men and women to the open and just hold it at the ranch and call it good.
I,
And
you know,
I was
I
like,
don't
all right,
know.
cool.
It is an interesting idea. Yeah, I don't know how they're going to handle it, because how do you tell people, how do you tell national champions that they don't count anymore? Or how do you
Yeah,
tell sanctional winners that they don't count anymore? So they have to find some way of reducing the field before it gets to Aromas. But then even if you reduce the field before it gets to Aromas, like how do you do that? Do you do that with an online competition? Well, it's like we did an online competition and it was the open and we already found the people who are supposed to quote unquote be there. So how do you, like, what do you change to make it happen between now and then? So they have a lot of hurdles ahead of them. They have a
yeah,
lot of
and it's
hurdles
like
ahead of them.
3 months away. So
Yeah. Yeah. They're really getting up onto the part, like the time of year where they have to be very aggressively starting to plan things out. And
yeah, there was only gonna be like what 6, maybe 7 more sanctionals in the next 3 months before it even started, before CrossFit Games started. So like,
Actually, the season was halfway. So there was 14 or 15 sanctionals that
okay,
had to happen between March and the beginning of August. So there's a lot of sanction events that were supposed to occur. Um, and really in the individual field, the effect that would have is like most of the top 10 have already qualified, but a substantial number of the top 10, like 30 or 40%, have not yet gotten their qualifying spots.
yeah,
And then on top of that, it's the teams. Like the team competition right now is 12 or 13 teams, and it could have been and should have been by the end of the season like 25 or 26 teams.
okay,
So it's it was not a good time
no,
to shut things down. Yeah.
they could always just do like, I mean, they could cancel it, which like or like cancel it and postpone it to the winter and make it like the winter CrossFit Games because they've never done that before, and they could just post it inside, or make them do like an outdoor winter track run like they did at the Sanctional this year. Um,
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I would be really surprised if they did not hold some sort of event at the first week of August. It's like the most CrossFit thing to do, to like just sort of grit your teeth and not listen to the prevailing wisdom and go your own way in pulling something like this off.
that's very true. But speaking of like carving your own path and prevailing and shit like that, how'd you get started? Like,
Oh man.
this
Yeah,
podcast
so
is like your story and how you got to this point.
okay, yeah, that's cool. Um we'll start at the beginning, right?
Awesome.
That's funny. So I started doing CrossFit in like 08, 09, somewhere around there. And I was in college. I was super bored with like everything. I was bored with school. I was bored with work. I just wanted to do something different. I knew that I wasn't going to be pursuing anything related to my degree, at least not like straight out of college. So I started doing this CrossFit thing, and I really enjoyed it. I had never really been athletic before, so it kind of struck a chord with me unexpectedly. And, fast forward a couple of years, I'd gotten an opportunity to train with some of the best coaches in the space. People who had started gyms way, way, way early on, were some of the earliest CrossFit gyms in multiple specialties. And I was kind of like an intern slash assistant coach for a bunch of them over the course of like the last like year and a half of my university. So by the time I graduated, I'd gotten my L1. I had spent all this time being an assistant coach, and I was like, maybe I should look for this coaching thing, because I definitely didn't want to get a real job, and I wasn't really interested in going back to school. And it just so happened that my older brother, who was the one who got me into CrossFit to begin with, was also not happy about his work environment. So he was like, you know what? I think I'm going to open my own gym. And he's like, do you want to open this gym with me? I was like, of course I want to open this gym with you. It's going to be awesome. And so the two of us opened an affiliate in LA called CrossFit 818. And that was in 2011. I think we signed the lease in 2010, and we opened our doors in 2011 after a few months of renovations to the space. And it was great. I mean, it was really cool. And as that was happening, we got a chance to sort of develop ourselves as business people and as coaches and as CrossFitters and all that sort of stuff. And through that process, we had hired a coach who had been running a blog. Like, he'd been writing a blog. He had owned a gym for years before that, and he had moved out to LA, and he and his wife were like looking for work. So through some friends, we connected with him and brought him on board to help out at the gym. And one of the things that he had been doing really regularly was writing a blog. Like, every week he would write this personal blog, and he encouraged me to do that. He was like, you know what, dude, I think, it doesn't really matter if people read it or not. It's just going to be good for you if you could, commit to doing this thing and write something every week. And so I started doing that. And I started my blog, and it was called The Naked CrossFitter. And it was kind of like satirical and parody and sort of looking at CrossFit as like, I love it, but how ridiculous are we that we, take our shirt off to go for a run, or, chalk up before we do burpees, like jokes like that. Right. So I was kind of poking fun at like the ridiculousness of our community from the inside, which was really cool. And that ended up getting me noticed by quite a few people. The blog was, semi-popular. It was big enough so that like, my friends groups and the more like CrossFit events that I went to, most people were like familiar with what I did, which was great. And through that, I met a comedian named Eddie Ift. And Eddie is, he was one of the first comedians to have a podcast. And he got in my ear, and he was like, hey man, the stuff you write is pretty funny. And I think we could, I do CrossFit. He's been doing CrossFit forever too. He's like, I do CrossFit. Like, we should do a podcast together. I was like, all right, well, I've never done that before. It sounds like it's terrifying, but let's do it. And we started recording, and we just recorded every week for basically ever. Like, we recorded every week for like 6 years, 7 years. And that was the Wadcast podcast. So it's like, it started with me doing CrossFit and being bored with it and just like diving headfirst and learning everything I could about it and becoming this like huge nerd, to like opening my own gym with my brother, becoming the best coach I could possibly be, and also writing about CrossFit on the side about like, how funny and ridiculous it is, some of the stuff that we do. And then started the podcast shortly after that. And through the podcast, I kind of developed more of like an understanding of media and what it is that, people want to listen to and how they listen to it, or, just in general, like content consumption for people. And I was able to, you know, make a splash in the space by doing that, which was very nice. And it that parlayed into a job out here in Austin, which is what took me to Austin to begin with. Like, you know, I got basically recruited by a company called Flow Sports, and like, you know, Flow Elite is the most recognizable in our space, at least the part of that. You know, they live stream events like Wadapalooza and Granite Games and stuff like that. So I was hired to be the senior editor for Flow Sports. So I was in charge of all the, or it's for Flow Elite. So I was in charge of all the content, um, and everything involved in like the storytelling side of Flow Elite. And that is where I learned about video production and project management and planning and budgeting and all the sort of like nitty gritty versions of what goes into actually making a machine like that work. And then, you know, after a few years there, they were downsizing. Like they had made a couple of bad bets and they were downsizing, and I was part of that downsizing. Pretty much all of Flow Elite was, and I decided to launch my own thing. I was like, all right, let's see what happens. So it's been a little over 2 years, and yeah, it's around 2 years now, I would say, that I've been doing my own YouTube channel, and it's definitely, you know, it's definitely an interesting type of work. I think is a great word. It's an interesting type of work. I really enjoy what I get to do, and it has very unique perks, but it also has very unique challenges, and you know, uh, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I remember like I started. Well, I found CrossFit in 2012, but I saw it on like ESPN as like strong this man in the world basically, and I was like the first event I saw was the obstacle race where Spencer Hendel beat Rick Cronin,
Nice.
and I was like, this is super cool, and I was like, wait, I can't do this, and then I just kind of watched it, and then like when I started CrossFit it was like 2014, but like as soon as I started, like I same thing, nerded out. I was like, this is gonna be what I'm doing the rest of my life. And like just started googling everything I could, like found Wadcast podcast and listened to you and Eddie. I actually talk to Eddie every once in a while, like through
Nice.
Instagram. We'll DM each other back and forth. We were supposed to put on a show here in January, but they canceled it, so I miss him. So, like, how would you say you've been able to overcome these challenges of like being part of Flow Elite and then not being part of Flow Elite or Flow Sports, and then having to go on your own, I guess, um, whether it was creating the gym with your brother or creating content for everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are creating content, but I think that because you've been around it for a lot longer than most of the people that are putting content out, you have a special, unique way of looking at it. How would you, in your own words, describe like overcoming these challenges to get to here?
Yeah, that's a solid question, man. I mean, the fact is, it's a daily thing, you know? I feel like I'm constantly trying to overcome some sort of a whether it's like a problem or a hurdle or you know, some sort of come up with some sort of solution to something I'm dealing with. Um, and some days I'm more successful than others, honestly. But at the end of the day, I think it's important for any sort of content creator to have kind of like a guiding light. Like you have to understand generally where you fit and what it is that you do really well that people respond to. And on top of that, ideally, that also corresponds with like what you like to do, right? So if you enjoy it and people like to see it and you're kind of able to provide it really well, that's a really solid combination. And for me, uh, one of the things that I really love more than anything else is kind of like education type thing, like
Okay.
uh, you know, clearing up complex situations or making connections between things that seem like they might not be connected at all, and saying, hey guys, here's like this really crazy story, but it really boils down to something that happened 5 years ago. And that's where this thing started. And that's why this is important today, because those steps along the way got us here. Like, I think that type of, simplification and contextualization is really important. And it's something that I feel like I'm really good at doing. And I think people enjoy that, and it makes sense that people enjoy it, especially because, the CrossFit environment is complex. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of personalities. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of, shenanigans, and every one of those pieces colors the decisions and the different sort of things that are happening within the space. And so it's helpful to have somebody who can say, all right, well, here's the context of why this matters. 10 years ago, something happened, and now we do it this way. And so for me, a big part of what, has driven any sort of success that I've had in the space has been, can I stay true to providing that? If I'm like struggling with trying to figure something out, generally speaking, I try to like step away for a second, simplify it down to like, is this in line with what I know works and what I want to be doing, and how I know I can make it right. And then the second part of that is, I think that I'm kind of representative of a lot of different CrossFitters, because I started doing CrossFit forever ago, and that puts me into like this very strange world of like people who've been CrossFitting for more than 10 or 12 years. So I know a lot about it from that perspective of like not being athletic, being overweight, starting doing, fitness out of the blue, and diving in headfirst because I love it. I've been a professional coach. I've been a gym owner. I've been, semi-competitive. I've been on the media side of things. I've been on the event organization side of things. So I have all of this experience. And so in a way, I'm kind of representative of many, many people. And at the bottom of all that, I'm just a fan of the sport. So like, to me, if I am making something, it's going to be something that I want to see or I want to hear, because I know that if I want to see it and I want to hear it, it probably doesn't exist. And there are a lot of other people that want to see it and want to hear it. So to me, that's kind of like those are like my guiding lights, right? It's like, would I enjoy what I'm making? And does it fit into what I know I do very well? So that's kind of how I solve those problems.
That's awesome. That's like the coolest answer.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks, man.
you're welcome. Who like helped you find your work ethic? Like growing up, who inspired you, motivated you, helped you find this work ethic that just makes you want to bring all this cool content to us CrossFit nerds?
My entire family is very entrepreneurial. My dad, my parents moved to the United States from Iran in the 70s, and my dad came here to go to school. He came here to get his master's in accounting, and my mom came here because she actually was just coming to visit my dad, and as she was leaving, the revolution happened in Iran, so she wasn't allowed to go back, and she like didn't see her mom for like 10 years because they basically got stuck on other side on different parts of the world. And so my parents basically came to the US with less than nothing, and fresh out of school. My dad's got like his master's in accounting, and he's working at like a Wendy's.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the story goes something like there was a Church's Chicken across the street from the Wendy's, and the owner wanted to sell it. And so he decided to like save up all his money and buy it. And that's what he did. And so my dad has been an entrepreneur his whole adult life, basically. My entire life, he ran restaurants. Um, and so it's like, it's in the family to be that kind of a self-starter. You know, both my brothers in their own ways did that as well. In one way or another, we've all been entrepreneurial. It was always just it was part of like growing up that you did something like that. Um, and you know, my my dad always used to tell me, he was like, you know, I don't care if you're a businessman, I don't care if you're, you know, a teacher, I don't care if you're a trash guy. Like, I don't care if you just if you're the guy who comes by and takes out the trash. He goes, but whatever it is that you're going to do, be the best at it that you possibly can be. It's like, if you want to be a trash guy, be the best trash guy in the world. I was like, all right. And that really stuck with me. You know, so like seeing the sacrifices that my parents had to make and, you know, their work ethic and seeing sort of what my brothers went through. My brothers are a little bit older than I am. My oldest brother is 8 years older than me, and our middle brother is 6 years older than me. So they were well into college and well into their adult lives by the time I was getting into college and, like, you know, becoming an adult myself. So I kind of saw the struggles and stuff that they went through with their businesses and their work. And you know, it's like a combination of those things. Like, everyone around me was always working really hard. Um, and the concept of not applying myself as much as I possibly could was like foreign growing up, like regardless of what it was, whether I was reading or playing video games or doing homework or doing projects or, you know, whatever it was, I just always felt like I had to apply myself as hard as I possibly could to it.
That's awesome. That
Yeah.
strikes home a lot, actually. What I think that was amazing. What are your future plans with all this going on? I mean, before the pandemic and now with the pandemic, you still get to work from home. You're in your
Yeah.
office right now. What are some of the future plans you have for Armenhammertv slash Takeover CrossFit?
Yeah. You know, everything is very vague right now. There's like, it's, the future is very foggy, I think is a good way of describing it. And by the future, I don't necessarily even mean like the next couple months. I mean like the last half of the year looks really foggy. It's very, very hard to tell where the sport is going to be, where the events are going to be, where gyms are going to be in 5 months or 6 months. And I think that's a little worrisome for some people. I know for me, my skill set can lend itself to a lot of different things. And one of the things that I've always had on my sort of like overarching to-do list is diversify the type of content that I make. And so this has kind of been like a kick in the ass to like do that, you know. And you know, like I said earlier, it's been mixed results. I'm happy with mostly with what I've put out, and it has had some moments where it shines, but mostly it's fallen flat. So it's kind of like this experimentation period, which was where I was 2 years ago when I first started this channel. And so, you know, there's kind of this idea of like, okay, let's experiment a little bit more. Let's keep looking for where there are angles, where I might have a little bit of leverage, where I have relationships with people, to create content that's, you know, fits in line with my directives, and go from there. So like specifically, I couldn't tell you. You know, specifically one of the things I was planning for was a really very cool. I was really excited about it. Kind of like a different way of doing what I do at the games. You know, I spent tens of thousands of dollars in the past like 6 months, basically experimenting at events, trying to say, all right, what can I pull off? What could it look like? What amount of staff do I need? How many people do I need to help me? What does it look like from morning to night every single day? You know, what are my costs? How can I? So I put together this kind of experiment over the past like 5 months, basically just saying, you know, all of it being a preparation or some sort of prototype for what I wanted to do at the games, because the games were so successful for me last year. And it was just me. I was like running around with just like my camera and my phone. That was basically it. And so I was like, you know what, if just me alone could make it super successful, I think I could do a lot more, you know, with a little bit of a team. And seeing that sort of fall apart and you know, not come to fruition is a bit of a bummer. You lose like a lot of momentum in that situation. So like that's a bit of a thing that I was like really planning for and really trying to execute as best as I possibly could. That just got not just shelved, but basically like into the shredder and like thrown into the recycling, like just spread into the wind. Like it just has no possibility of coming to fruition anymore. So it you know, it kind of flips on its head. What's cool is that like this is my hub, and you can't really see it because you're facing like the studio part of it, but like the office is kind of a mess. You know, my desk is covered in electronics and computers and like camera equipment and audio recording equipment, and like I'm looking at it right now, and someone who doesn't understand it would probably be really overwhelmed with how junky everything looks. But this allows me to speak to everyone on the face of the planet. Like I can go live to everyone on the face of the planet if I wanted to. I could create content for anyone on the planet. And so there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot to gain by working in this environment. So, you know, I don't know what it exactly might look like, but I know that there's definitely a ton of opportunity like hidden amongst all of these challenges.
Well, thank you so much. That's all the like written down questions and stuff I have. Is there like, I mean, I have a bunch of like nerdy questions that I will ask you next time we meet in person that don't need to be like thrown on here. But is there anything else you wanted to say to the CrossFit community, people in general that just need like someone to like look up to, or maybe someone's feeling down about like this whole, hey, my gym's not doing it hot right now. So like I know you've already through this conversation you've given a lot of like ways and encouragement of what you can do. Like anything else you would like to say to everyone out there?
Yeah, you know, I think I did a lot of content about how people can help gyms and businesses and things like that, but I didn't do very much content about how people can help themselves in a situation like this. And I think the important thing is to find and create normalcy through some sort of habit. Um, you know, there's value, of course, in having like, you know, your job have normal hours and knowing when and where your commute is and knowing what classes you take at the gym. But when all of that goes out the window and you're working from home and you have to deal with the kids and, you know, no one's schedule is lining up, it really throws you for a loop on multiple levels. And I think the best piece of advice I can give is find and create some sort of normalcy through habits. You know, set aside time every single day to do the same thing at the same time of day, knowing that you can create that, even if it's like 20 minutes. Because then it kind of becomes like a linchpin to the rest of your day. It kind of becomes like this centerpiece of like everything else can be programmed and scheduled around that. You know, for me, having my wife work, it still creates a sense of normalcy for me because I wake up, you know, in the morning with her while she's getting ready. I prep her lunch for her. We have coffee together in the morning for like, you know, 20, 30 minutes. And then, you know, we talk about, oh, how'd you sleep? And, you know, what's going on? What are you looking forward to? Whatever. And then, you know, she goes off to work and then I come into the office, right? Or I'll play with the dogs a little bit and work my way slowly into the office. So it's like, there's that at the beginning of the day for us. At the end of the day, she comes home and we get right into the garage and work out, right? So there's like two sort of segments that are big, important, overarching habits that we've created and are, you know, really actively fostering. And I think it doesn't have to be those specific things. It doesn't have to be anything even that complicated. It can simply be, this is the time of day that I take the kids out and the dogs out for a walk, or this is the time of day that I sit down and I don't sit on my phone. I spend 20 minutes just like staring off into the backyard, right? Like just creating any sort of normalcy through habit is really, really valuable.
Well, thank you. That, that was awesome.
Thanks, man. It's my pleasure. I'm really glad. Thanks for inviting me on and
Yeah, you're welcome. I
letting
haven't
me
got to
chat
see you
away.
since like Granite Games 2017. That was
Yeah, it's
one of
been
the biggest
forever,
ones
man.
ever.
Yeah.
Uh, where can people find you? I'll link everything in the description so people know where. But people don't read. Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just Armenhammertv. It's Armenhammertv on Instagram, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere. And I have a website, and it mostly is open usually to sell stuff, but I don't know if anything's being sold around. I don't think so. You can go to armenhammer.tv for that. But yeah, mostly my content is Instagram or YouTube.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If we ever get let out of our houses, I can't wait to hang out in person.
Likewise.
Yeah, I'll see you. See you soon.
Very soon, buddy. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.